Alright, today we had a customer drop off this 80 series Land Cruiser. He's already fitted up the motor using a Marks Adapters bell housing and clutch kit, as well as the extractors and the AC and alternator relocation kit, and he's basically just dropped it off to get the rest of the stuff done here. I think the first thing that I'll get onto is the power steering. He's fitted up the reservoir relocation, but he's forgot to cut the engine lift bracket off the side, so we'll do that first and make the high pressure power steering line. Before that, I've got a kit in stock as the same one as he's used, so we can go over that and see how all that goes together. So if you order the manual bell housing kit, this is what you're going to get. We've got the bell housing adapter that goes between the standard 80 series bell housing and the LS. Then we have the engine mount kit. This is a direct bolt on, so there's no cutting or welding required for this one. And then we have the clutch setup. It comes with all the hardware you need, along with your clutch disc, flywheel and pressure plate. There's a little bit more to this than your average one. It runs a flex plate and the flex plate stiffener. And from the flex plate stiffener you run this large spacer, and the normal flywheel and clutch sits on top of that. Since I had these in stock as well, I thought I'd show you the extractors that come with the kit. They come in painted mild steel and also stainless. The two sets I've got on the table, the painted ones on the left are for an auto and the stainless ones are for a manual. Now that we've gone over that, we'll get on to making this power steering line. I cut the end off the high pressure power steering hose from the 80 series and then just used some rubber hose to set my length up to the power steering pump. And on this end I'll get him to put a right angle fitting. We've got it back out and we'll get this end joined up to the VE banjo and the other side hooked up to the 80 series hose. So I'll run this down to Pertec and get them to make up the new hose. So I've got the hose back from Pertec and you can see they've used new hydraulic hose with crimp fittings. And on this end we've got a right angle swivel so we can get our clocking correct as well. So I'll get this fitted up and we'll go and have a look. I've got both the high and low pressure lines in the steering box, and they just run down along the radiator where they used to. I retain most of the hard line on the low pressure side and just replace the rubber hose and new clamps. And I also cut the engine lift bracket off the side of the reservoir. Next up we'll go with the fuel system. These are just the diesel senders, so we'll have to modify them to accept the Raceworks pump. And for 90% of the conversions I've been using these EFP 501s. I've cut down the pickup tubes and fitted both pumps, and to pass the power through we'll be using this O-ring terminal. And you need to find a spot on each sender to drill a hole through the lid where it's not going to interfere with anything. It's also important to use in-tank fuel hose, as normal fuel hose will just disintegrate after a couple of months. The power terminal can turn around and short out, so it can't hurt to put a bit of epoxy on the top. All that's left is to put the senders back in the tank and hook up the fuel lines. I've got the sub-tank sender back in, and on the pressure side I put a check valve so when the other fuel pump's on it can't backfeed into this pump. And same goes for the main tank sender. We've got a check valve fitted so when the rear tank's on it won't backfeed into this one either. Up next we'll move on to the exhaust. They don't sell a kit, so I've just got a standard 3-inch diesel exhaust which we'll modify to suit. I'll only need the two pieces in front of me and that small bit at the back, and the rest we can chop up to make up the centre section. I'll start by cutting it off just in front of the muffler here. I've got the muffler and the rear section all fitted up to the car now, and I've flanged up the muffler in front where I've cut it off. So now I need to fab up a section that goes between the rear muffler and the two extractors at the front. And I need to find space for a cat on either side of the box, as well as make up a heat shield for where we've put the fuel filter. I'll start with these 100 cell bullet cats and a couple of 30-degree bends to match the extractor flange. Alright, so I've got both of the cats and bends tacked up to the extractor flanges. Now we need to cut up another section of pipe so we can run it out the back of the cat and up over the cross member. So I've cut out a straight section and a few bends from the rest of the exhaust that we don't need. We'll get this over to the car and start tacking it up. I've got that straight section in the left hand side with the bend facing up so it clears over the transfer case, and I'll take this other smaller section with the bend and then weld it to the end of this pipe, and from there we can go up over the transfer case and join it into the driver's side pipe. I've got those two pieces tacked up now, along with another small section which faces it back towards the rear muffler. The right hand side should be easy considering it's just about straight, so we'll move on to making the collector. To make the collector I'm going to use a 90-degree bend. I've set it up in the bandsaw so I can cut out the back of the bend, and to make sure my cut is straight I'm going to use this digital angle finder. You can just use a spirit level, but it makes it easy if you've got one of these. I zero it out on the bed and then just hold it up against the pipe and make sure that it's at 90 degrees. 89 is close enough. Once I've got it sitting up straight I just need to set the cut depth, I just run a ruler from the blade down to where it's been cutting into the bed and just set the depth from there. I'm aiming for about half of the diameter of the centre of the bend, maybe a little bit oversized so I can trim it down later. Now I've got the back cut out of this bend and we've cleaned it up on the belt sander. To make the collector I need to cut this bend in half, so I'll measure across the gap and find the centre. It seems to be just over 19.5 centimetres, so just under 10 will be fine. We'll mark this with a Sharpie and then we'll take it back over to the bandsaw and cut it in half. I've cut it in half and cleaned it up on the belt sander. Now both pieces fit together quite nicely, and that I've still got a 3-inch hole at the end that will be welding to this other piece of pipe that will continue the exhaust. And now we'll move on to the welding montage. I've got the collector all welded up now, but unfortunately this pipe's got some coating on it and all of the welds are coming out slightly crusty, but still coming out much better than a MIG job. With all the welding complete, I coated the whole exhaust with some high temp ceramic paint and then fitted it all up to the car. There's plenty of clearance against the floor pan and up over the transfer case and where it joins into the muffler. While I've got the TIG running, I'll make up a quick bracket for the throttle pedal and we'll take it over to the bench. It's just a simple triangle bracket with the bolt pattern in the original pedal on the back and 3 studs on the front to accept the new electronic throttle pedal. I'll take this over and fit it to the car and we'll have a look. I've got the pedal and bracket bolted in now, and when I made the bracket I tried to get the pedal to line up with the other two. Onto the wiring now. I've got myself another standalone loom from Allen Gibbs at Calmaker. If you've seen any of the other videos, this will look quite familiar. All we really need to wire into the actual body are these wires here. We've got ignition, tacho, fuel pump and engine light. And the rest of the harness just clips on the engine like normal, and all we need to do is hook up the alternator to this main power wire here and also these 2 wires for the thermo fans. I'll come back to you once I've got it fitted to the engine. With the engine loom all fitted up, I've had to power the body of the Land Cruiser through a wire off the alternator since this doesn't have a fuse box fitted to it at the moment. I've fitted the intake just with a right angle bend and the airflow meter for now. He's getting an airbox made up later. With the engine bay just about complete, we'll dissect the original 80 series loom and get everything hooked up on the inside. For this variant, we're going to need most of this loom here that goes down to the gearbox, the coolant temp sensor and the oil pressure sender. And this plug goes to the rest of the gearbox harness. Inside the car we've got the E38 ECU hooked up, and I mounted the relays and fuses up under the dash here. The tacho wire goes to this black wire. It used to run to this brown module. All that's left in this plug is the starter motor trigger wire. I fitted a 4-pin plug to the end of Allen's loom. The engine light won't be hooked up because this car doesn't have one. The pink wire runs to an ignition source, and the purple wire will run down to our fuel pump changeover relay. The purpose of using this extra relay is that it will change fuel pumps when you hit the sub-tank button. And the trigger wire is located in the left-hand kick panel. It's this red wire in the back corner of the white terminal. I still have to mount the ECU inside the glove box, but I've got the rest of the wiring all zip tied out of the way. Next we need to hook up the fuel pumps themselves. Since there were no fuel pumps, we've had to add the power and an earth wire. Power runs over to the terminal we fitted earlier and just the earth goes into one of the screws. Same goes for the main sender unit, and I've also added plugs to both of them so they can be removed easily. Last but not least, we have to get the tacho working. Since this was driven off a coil, the LS2 signal is not going to work, so we need to pull the dash out and bypass one of the resistors. With the front off the dash and the 3 screws removed from the back, I can now remove the tacho module. The resistor we need to bypass is this one here, and rather than removing it, I've just jumped the 2 solder connections on the back. So I'll get this back together and in the car, and we'll fire her up. Alright, so no dyno today. The customer's going to come back after he fits the part-time 4-wheel drive kit. But as you can see, we've got all the dash working, oil pressure, tacho, and the coolant temp will come up once it gets a bit warmer. Since the customer already started this, I didn't go too in depth, but I've got 4 more of them to do in a few months, so I'll make videos on them. And also we've finished up a couple more patrols, including an LS2, so I'm sure you'll be interested in that. Unfortunately I don't get time to do much editing. I'll try and get them out as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching.